Thank you. Item 16.6, approval to open Lila Bringhurst. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you very much, President Jones. I'll provide a brief introduction for this, and Associate Superintendent Pfeiffer may add some additional comments to provide further context. This item is coming forward tonight for the board's consideration and potential action to approve opening the Lila Bringhurst Elementary School campus for the 22-23 school year. As a clarifying point, we recognize that it is currently open as a campus, but it's being used to house our Hopkins students due to construction delays at their facility. This item is coming forward based on prior decisions and directions of the board from May of 2019. At that time, the board took action to approve opening Bringhurst School to the public the following school year once it was determined that student enrollment numbers reach 160 during the year. So we have exceeded that threshold, and based on that criteria, staff prepared this agenda item to bring it forward for the board's review and consideration. And Associate Superintendent Pfeiffer, there's additional context, and then we'd be happy to answer questions from trustees. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Sandoval, are there any speakers?
I'm seeing none.
Okay, back to the board. Any questions, concerns about, yes, Trustee Sweeney.
Thank you. I absolutely appreciate this being brought to the board. Right now, the school is being used with Hopkins, so there's no additional costs passed on to the district by opening the school. I know that it would be great to open the school. I just don't feel that we have the right to open a school that only has maybe 300 total students, when we also have to add the other additional costs of administrators and staff and such. So I'm reluctant at this time to approve it. I absolutely want Lila Bringhurst to open, but I would like it to be opened under a larger, broader group of students to make the school more robust. I do know that I'm part of the immersion program task force that is attempting to find ways to grow and expand the two existing language immersion programs. And I think that one of the considerations is Lila Bringhurst, but based on the results that we've seen so far, and this is a work in progress, of course, that we're not seeing an overwhelming majority who would like to be located there. So I would propose that we do not move forward with opening it at this time, but open it when we either have a set amount of students that can be going forward, or when we know that one of the immersion programs will be taking over that, the open space that's available there. But at this point, I don't think it would be financially smart for us to be engaging in opening the school with such a low pupil enrollment. If we had a school that only had 300 students, an elementary school that only had 300 students, we might be considering, if we continue to be in declining enrollment, to close that school, because it would not be the best use of our dollars. Surrounding school districts like Oakland have decided to keep schools open with 250 and 300 students in elementary school. It's a tough decision to close a school, but it's an even tougher decision to have the state come in and decide what's going to happen. So I don't think we're at the situation where the state's going to come in and decide. But at this time, I would be more in favor of keeping this on the back burner and bring it up when we have a defined use for it.
Thank you, Trustee Sweeney. I'm going to just take a minute to give my comments really quickly before I ask for the rest. I understand what you're saying, Trustee Sweeney. I would like to point out that the board had set a target that we have set, and I know that was, I think that was in 2019. Is that correct, that we set a target? We have made that target. One of my concerns is the longer that we put off opening Bringhurst and we have students in that attendance area who are currently attending other schools, the harder it is and the more disruptive it is to bring them back to Bringhurst. So I am concerned about those families who have kids at other schools, and the longer they're at those other schools, the harder it is for those students to return. I'm also concerned that that area and that school, when we're facing declining enrollment, that is a draw. That can be an enticement for families to move into that area if they know they're going to be able to go to that neighborhood school that's within walking distance rather than being sent to another school at a different part in the district. I also think that while we haven't decided anything about the immersion programs right now, if we don't open it, then the possibility for consolidation or expanding to Bringhurst is off the table for next year. So I don't think I want to limit us to not having that option. And as I mentioned, I think, we hit the target that the board has sent, and I really want to see that be a draw for enrollment and for families to move into that area. And I'm concerned that the longer we put it off, the harder it is going to be to attract families to that area. So those are my concerns. So for me, it's not without reservations, and I know it's not without problems, but I at least right now agree with opening Bringhurst. So yes, Trustee Campbell.
I just wanted to add that the district, the attendance area for Bringhurst has had that school open to draw families in, and it has not happened. The immersion programs don't have a majority from either group that even want to go to Bringhurst. So I think we always have the option of opening it. But once we open it, we're going to obligate X amount of dollars in funds for a school that might have less than 200 kids. So I just want the board to consider that. Thank you.
Yes, Trustee Campbell.
Okay. I guess I have mixed emotions about that also, but I'm also curious about the affordable housing complex that's going to be coming over there. When they started that project, that Warm Springs Development Project, I think the city council approved like 27% of those houses had to be, because they had a public outcry about affordable housing in that area, 4,000 houses coming up there. So I don't know how many of those units have actually been built, which could also be an attraction to bring folks over, depending on, if $1 million is affordable, right? But I think that the fact that they do have some percentage of that development that's affordable housing may be a draw for people as well. And I'm also concerned with the alternative. The alternative would be that the school sat empty, and it continued to sit empty. We used it this year, and I think the kids that were in the school, I don't know if we have any feedback from whether or not they enjoyed being in the school. I know initially there was some congestion with traffic, but in terms of their lived experience with actually being in the classrooms there, I haven't heard anything negative about it. It appears that it turned out to be a very positive situation for the kids and their families after the initial adjustment. So much so that they probably don't even want to go back to Hopkins right now. And then the other concern that I would have is, do we have a principal for the school?
Yes, so we do have a principal that's already been hired for the school. That was done a few years back. And we also have allocated the funds for that in the budget for the out years. So as you may recall, we looked at budget reductions last year. One of the things that was a part of that discussion was to not move forward with opening Bringhurst for this school year. And that savings, really gets categorized as a one-time saving, because each year then in the out year, we build it back into the budget to make sure we're prepared for any year that we need to open it. So the budget is already constructed in a fashion that it contains the appropriate dollars for staffing and administration. And we do have a principal who's been selected for the position, and I'd have to defer to HR to see if we have any other individuals who have been already selected for positions to that site in prior years.
Yeah, we do have 5 teachers, I believe, that were identified as going to Bringhurst.
Is that all we need? Is that all we need?
Likely it's not all we need, but that's what we have right now.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a way that we could have the I don't know, the community do marketing for us? I mean, the leasing office or rental office or purchasing office, do marketing for us that the school will open?
I think that's certainly something we can reach out to the developers and ask and to see how they can help us spread that message. I think there's a lot of good points being raised in terms of consideration for a delay or consideration for opening it. I think one thing that, excuse me, one thing that I believe may be true is given the chance to open, the school gets a chance to create its identity, it gets a chance to create its culture. And I think that sets its place within the community and helps create the attractiveness of attending there. And so if the board were to affirm the decision to open the campus, then we could certainly reach out to those individual developers and see how they could help us message. We could work with our public information officer and see how we can engage in some deeper messaging within that community. I think as Trustee Campbell, as you're pointing out, as development continues there, I don't have any data to say that the school staying closed would hinder it, but I think it's a safe assumption to say that opening the school is not going to hurt the development. I think it only stands to possibly help make it a little bit more enticing. As President Sweeney said, we normally wouldn't operate schools at that size, and it may be something that we have to adjust for year over year. And as President Jones said, each year that I'm reiterating the point a little bit, so please forgive me, it's not word for word, but each year we don't reopen the campus, the students living in that community set roots into a different homeschool. And so that's a transition point that we'll have to meet at some point anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Trustee Zhang.
Okay, so what is the capacity of Lila Bringhurst?
1,100.
I thought it was 600.
Yeah, I think it's just over 1,000 students, approximately 1,100.
1,100. So, okay.
Yeah, Trustee Prasad.
So obviously, I wasn't here when the prior decision was made. So the threshold was 160. So that's like 15% of the capacity. So when you operate like that, then is that more expensive per student to run the school?
Generally, when you look at considerations for closing a school, and these are very generalized talking points, so that can be dangerous, but to give some context to the discussion, when you look at closing a school, generally the savings that you experience are from the administration and the classified support staff because the number of teachers remains. So our number of teachers won't change, in my opinion, very dramatically based on where we open the school. It's the additional cost for the office staff, for the school administrator, and the custodial staff. So that's where you generally wouldn't operate a school that small unless it were a specialized program, such as Rick's or Glankler or an individual program like that. In terms of a future consideration for consolidation of one of our immersion programs or any other program that the district may need space for, there is a provision within the agreements with the developers that we have a reserve capacity for what I would consider home attendance area students. As long as we meet that need, we can include other programs on that campus. And so that is something for future consideration, whether it's a later conversation for one of the immersion programs. And I think as Trustee Sweeney has pointed out, there's not data or evidence at this point that supports that interest. But other programs certainly could be there or be a part of that campus, so long as we're annually meeting the reserve capacity. And the agreements outline that the district will meet with the developers annually to set that number. And that's something that we're prepared to engage in if it's affirmed to open the campus.
So for this set of students, so if the classes were more or less full to capacity, then you would need 5 or 6 teachers to operate that school. Now those teachers are already on payroll today, so we are not really going to be saving. There are no extra dollars to be spent in terms of opening the school, right?
In terms of opening the school, I don't want to say there's no extra dollars, but we have accounted for that in our budgeting in the multi-year budget projections. So opening the school is already accounted for. To be clear for the community, I think our trustees certainly understand this. The teachers that have already been selected to transfer over there and the administrator that's already been hired to work there are individuals who are already working in those similar roles for the district. So in that sense, we would need to take the principal that's been selected and replace them, right? So there is a cost associated with that. But the teachers generally are going to flow with the students, and then we have to wait and see what all of the grade breakdowns are. It may mean that some classes are a little smaller. It may mean that some are maxed out. It may mean that we need some combination classes. And those are all of the same considerations that we would make annually for any elementary school that we're staffing. So there are some costs associated with opening, but they're built into the budget already.
Then one more question from a facility perspective. Let's say we keep it closed. I mean, a building is also a living, breathing thing, right? So by keeping it closed, there are downsides of keeping a campus unoccupied. So have we assessed that?
Yeah, there are some considerations for the facility side of it. The facility, since it's been completed and we've taken receipt of their property, that then triggers a number of the warranties on different aspects of the facility and their property. And so that timeline is moving on a number of things. If it were to sit vacant, then we may not know of issues that are taking place. So there are some things from a facility standpoint that we would want to give consideration to opening versus leaving it closed and having that living, breathing building, so to speak, sit stagnant for an extended period of time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Trustee Sweeney.
Thank you, President Jones. I sat in on all those discussions with Trustee Crosby. We don't necessarily have to get the permission of the developer, but we did have to set aside a certain amount of seats. We're in a different era at that time when we're increasing enrollment, so that won't be an issue. Would the board consider having this brought back to us in one meeting for these two considerations? One, if there are 160 students, could you tell us how they would break down? Maybe 70 of them are kindergarten or what have you. It would be in our favor to look at the more that we're in the primary grades. If we had 2 or 3 primary grades, that would be building as we're going forward. The other is the immersion programs are going to have another meeting, and Assistant Superintendent Salinas can go into more detail. But if they knew that Lila Bringhurst School would be opened, that might change the votes. The parents have been surveyed, and quite extensive outreach by staff. And if that changes the vote to be more in consideration for going to one school to unify and grow that program, then I think that would be very valuable to us, and we could proceed without any worries. In fact, we could embrace it more because we would know we'd be going forward. It wouldn't be tenuous. But it's just for the board's consideration.
Just really quickly, Superintendent Kamick, what is the projected enrollment right now? Is 200 and...
So I want to...
Can you say that again?
I saw 200.
Right, but let's
233.
address
Okay.
that.
There's a nuance there which I think is important to identify. And Trustee Sweeney, I think I understand your request and the idea of knowing at what grade level they're at, how that sets forward the projection of growth. What I want to be very transparent about is I think that would be a very difficult number for us to bring back. The reason being, the identified number comes from our demographer. And the demographer looks at the attendance area of the school and draws that information out. Let's look at the number of 233. Of those students, many of them are in other schools. And so what we would be doing in theory, if we handle things the way we currently handle enrollment, Assistant Superintendent Salinas can add some context here if I might be out of practice or out of line. But what we would generally do is say to those families, Bringhurst is open. You may come back to your home school now. and give them also the opportunity to remain at the school which they've been attending. And so until we knew the answer for each individual family, it would be hard to get that information. And I think, as Trustee Sweeney's pointing out, if our outreach to those families was we're considering opening, it may be very different than it's open. What would your answer be? So we can work with our demographers, we can work with our student information system, we can try and pull some information that accurately describes the age range of the 233 students, but being able to definitively respond to what each grade level will be like would be, I think, a little bit too much of a projection, because we don't know how many families would come back.
I completely understand.
Okay.
But I was just using that as an example of X, Y, and Z. I'm actually, a huge proponent of getting that school built. It was very difficult to deal with the developers and the architect to have all the nuances you can imagine to put all that together, and to have this shining example. Of course, it's tough on all of us to see that school is empty. I was glad that we had it so that we could have a great alternative to Hopkins to keep educating, as well as construction on the school. So I would be in favor of moving this forward, and I'd be very much in favor of engaging the immersion program to see if it's going to be open, and this is where you're going to be going to grow. It's not going to be much of a choice, because if somebody wants to turn down a brand new school, then that's on them. One of the problems we're looking at, and I'm just as an observer, and please correct me, Assistant Superintendent Salinas, is we don't know. People say that they're going to leave the program if it moves. They're going to leave this, they're going to leave that. We don't know. The best case effort we could possibly give to any student in an immersion program in this district is to offer them a brand new school. So if they offer the brand new school and a lot of parents on both sides don't want to go, then maybe we unify the two programs at that one site, and the parents who don't want to go, don't go. But I think that if we're going to be in for a dime, we're going to be in for a dollar. So if we're going to open the school and have it available, we need to maximize the student enrollment at that site. And I would be very much in favor of doing that, because I think it's an area that can allow the immersion programs to grow, and it can be a magnet for the people moving in there. It's extremely disappointing, as we've seen, of how few students are generated from the 20,000 additional people who have come into Fremont in the last 10 years with the census. So that said, we're seeing it all around. In fact, some of the units that Trustee Campbell was talking about, the smaller units that are located right next to BART, they're 800 square feet, and people are paying close to $1 million for the privilege. So for anyone to think that there's an affordable housing component, we have to put it in perspective. And I'm just saying that it's unbelievable what times we're living in when that's considered affordable housing. So I would be supportive of this if we can go forward and use this school to fill it up as soon as possible, which would be over years, of course, but in the interest of providing the best educational environment for our students.
Yes, I think it's important, just aside from the immersion programs, is to recognize just what Superintendent Kamick has said. The longer we wait to open it, the harder it is going to be to convince families to move back to Bringhurst, because their kids become more entrenched at the schools where they currently are. So the longer we put it off, the harder it is going to be to get those students back. And whether the language programs utilize the space or not, once we open it, we just have options that we don't have on the table right now. We could even potentially, if the language programs are bent on not moving to Bringhurst, then we could consider another magnet program. We could have another science magnet program, or we currently don't have an arts magnet program at the elementary level. There's just options that would be attractive to entice folks to come to Fremont that we have if we open it, and the sooner the better. We've not been in a more optimistic financial position in a while, so this seems like it's an opportunity to open at a time when it's not going to take away from anything else. And so, I remain feeling like now's the time to pull the cord and get students onto the campus. Trustee Campbell?
No, I was just going to say to Trustee Sweeney's point, what if not all of the families wanted to come to Bringhurst, and we had enough families to have 3 classes of Mandarin or 3 classes of Spanish? That still would be attractive to people, you think?
It absolutely would be, and I don't want to get into the immersion nuances,
Right.
because I think educators and families are all of the idea that if we can provide a unified site,
Yeah.
we're going to have more robust educational development for all the students. And one of the things we're seeing with one of the programs is there's 14 and 15 kids in a classroom, and we don't want to have that either. So by opening it and having that as an option and seeing if we can use that to get us started, I'm supportive of this in the interest of, no. And the other thing too is the location is very challenging to a lot of people, and people are turning it down because of logistics, but we can't afford to have busing for one group when we don't have busing for all groups. So we just have to be able to consider that in the whole, delirium of data.
So, is there anyone willing to make a motion? Yes, Trustee Campbell?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. I do have a comment.
Okay,
as well.
so motion by Trustee Campbell, second by Trustee Prasad. Is there any further discussion or comment?
You want- Okay. I echo with Trustee Sweeney's
Forgotten so easily up here.
thought, and I'd like to bring the immersion program at a second discussion, because I am on the committee. I know that both of the program, the immersion Mandarin and Spanish, they are all adamant in having a unified program. So
I'm no longer supporting bringing it back for discussion. I am supportive of having it go forward tonight.
okay,
Well, you had made a comment. I just want to make sure that
okay, but then how do we do that?
well, it's
Because
before
it's
us tonight. The
before us
actual
now.
action item is tonight. I was asking to have it delayed,
Okay.
but I think that we see a path to rich educational opportunity by moving forward, knowing the whole board is behind it.
If I may, the immersion program discussion will come forward as a separate agenda item that had, already been planned to come forward. So that conversation can still happen specific to the immersion programs as a whole, but that's something that would be a separate agenda item and a separate conversation.
And just, I completely agree with that. And maybe it's going to be science, maybe it's going to be art, maybe it's going to be X, Y, Z. I'm just saying that if we're going to open it, we're going to be as aggressive as possible to get more students to be attracted. It was
Yes,
very,
Trustee-
very difficult to get that building built.
Trustee Prasad?
Yes, I was going to say what Larry concluded is, this is a brand new school. I saw the excitement in the Hopkins students' eyes as they went there. The facility is amazing. So we don't want to let it just rot over there. So let's open it, but let's be aggressive in marketing it, some of the ideas that came up, so that we are able to attract more students, make it a positive for the community to actually come and settle there as well.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Student board member, how would you vote?
I would vote in favor of the motion.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sandoval?
It is open for your votes. Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. Moving to 16.7, author